If you're here tonight, something brought you here, and I don't think it was an accident. Maybe your body is exhausted. But the moment everything went quiet, the house still, everyone asleep, the noise got louder, not outside, inside. The thoughts you pushed through all day are all here now. The worry about tomorrow, the fear you can't quite name, all of it, at once. I know that place. There was a season in my late 30s, deep in burnout, when nighttime was the hardest part. Not because anything dramatic was happening, but because the silence finally gave my mind room to run. Every night I'd lie there thinking, why can't I just rest? What I want to share with you tonight, what took me longer than I'd like to admit to learn, is that the weight you're feeling right now isn't a sign that something is wrong with your faith. It's something else entirely, and when we bring it to God the right way, something specific happens. The thoughts don't disappear, but they stop feeling like yours alone to carry. Stay with me. If what you just heard already feels true, stay. 2 small things before we continue. Subscribe if you want this kind of message waiting for you tomorrow night and the night after that. 1 new prayer every single day. And if someone in your life is carrying something heavy right now, a like helps them find this too. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening when the night gets heavy like this. There's something about nighttime that nothing else does. During the day, there's always something next. The next task, the next message, the next thing that needs you. And as long as there's a next thing, the weight stays manageable. You carry it, but you don't feel it fully. There's no space to. But then the day ends, the house goes quiet, the lights go down, and there's nothing left to move toward. And that's when it arrives. Not all at once. It seeps in. A thought about tomorrow. Something you said that you're not sure landed right. A fear that doesn't have a name yet. Just a weight, sitting somewhere in your chest, and you can't locate exactly where. Your body is exhausted, but your mind just found its opening. I know this feeling from the inside. There was a stretch of years, I was in my late 30s, where the last thing I did every night before trying to sleep was check my phone one more time. Not because I was expecting anything important, but because the silence felt like something I had to fill. The moment I put it down, everything I'd been out running all day was right there. I remember one specific night. I'd already been lying there for maybe an hour, and I realized I couldn't even tell you what I was anxious about. There was no single thing, just this accumulated weight that had been growing since morning, one small thing at a time, and I hadn't stopped once to put any of it down. And what made it lonelier, maybe you know this too, is that from the outside, everything looked fine. The people around me were asleep. The world had moved on. And I was still there in the dark, with a mind that wouldn't follow. That specific kind of alone. It's its own thing. What I want to say clearly, before anything else, is that this isn't weakness. This is what happens when a person carries a full day's worth of worry and uncertainty, mostly in silence, and then lies down with all of it still in their hands. You've been holding a lot, and tonight, you're still holding it. The real question isn't whether you're strong enough to get through this. You've already proven that. You're still here. The question is what you do in this moment. What most of us reach for when the weight gets this heavy. I did the same thing for years. And looking back, I'm not sure it was helping as much as I thought it was. So what do we do when the weight arrives and the mind won't stop? Most of us pray. And we pray in a very specific way. We ask God to take it away. Remove the anxiety. Quiet the thoughts. Let us sleep. I did this for a long time. Every night the same prayer. Different words sometimes, but the same request underneath. God, make this stop. And when I woke up the next morning still heavy, still tired in a way that sleep hadn't touched, there was this quiet guilt that came with it. Like the anxiety was still there because I hadn't prayed right. Because my faith wasn't strong enough to produce the result, because God had heard me and decided the weight was still mine to carry. I carried that guilt for months on top of everything else. The prayer wasn't working, but I didn't stop, because I didn't know what else to do. So I kept asking. Same request, same exhaustion, same morning. At some point I started to wonder if the problem wasn't the prayer itself, but what I was actually asking for. Because there's something underneath that prayer, God, take this away, that I didn't see for a long time. And when I finally saw it, the whole thing looked different. That's what I want to get into now. Here's what I finally saw. When I prayed, God, take this away, what I was really doing was asking God to fix the outcome while I stayed in control of everything that produced it. I wanted the anxiety gone, but I wasn't letting go of anything. I was just asking for the weight to feel lighter while my hands were still full. There's a line I'd read probably 100 times. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I always landed on the second half. He cares for you. That part was easy to receive. But one night, I was tired, not really reading, just holding the page. I stopped at the first word, cast. And I realized I had never actually done that. I'd mentioned my anxiety to God. I'd described it. I'd asked him to deal with it. But I'd never cast it, never released it from my hands entirely and let it land somewhere else. That's a completely different motion. And then there's something else. Jesus says, come to me, all of you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens. Not, come when you've calmed down. Not, come once you've prayed enough to deserve rest. Come weary, come burdened. Come exactly as you are right now. When I read that slowly, for the first time in a long time, something in me got very quiet. Not peaceful exactly. More like the specific stillness of realizing you've been doing something backwards for years. I hadn't been coming to God with the weight. I'd been asking God to come take the weight from a distance while I stayed where I was, still holding everything. And what I still didn't fully understand then, what took me longer to see, is why the weight keeps growing. Why it feels heavier at night than it did that morning. Where it actually comes from. Because it doesn't mostly arrive at bedtime. It arrives in the small moments of the day. One thing added here, one worry added there, and we keep moving, so we never notice the accumulation. By the time we lie down, we're carrying a week's worth of weight we thought we'd already dealt with. Understanding that changed the question entirely for me. It wasn't, why won't God take this away? It became, what would it actually mean to stop carrying this alone? That question has an answer, and it's more concrete than I expected. But before I get into it, one quick thing. If what we've been talking about is landing somewhere real for you, if you recognize that weight, that cycle of asking God to take something while still holding it yourself, then I want to tell you about something I put together specifically for nights like this one. It's called 30 Days of Faith, a guided prayer devotional. It's a 30-day prayer journey, written and recorded by me, built for exactly the kind of moment you're in right now. Not a one-time prayer, a daily practice, something that meets you where you are every morning or every night for 30 days straight. Because one video can open a door, but what changes the way you carry things, what actually builds the kind of faith that holds under pressure, is what you do every day. The link is in the description. It's called 30 Days of Faith. I'd love for you to have it. Now, let's get into what actually changes when you stop asking God to remove the weight and start learning to release it. Here's the shift. Not asking God to take the weight away, but actually releasing it. Handing it over completely. The difference sounds small. It changes everything. When I finally tried this, really tried it, I didn't say, God, please make this stop. I said something closer to, God, I've been holding this all day. I don't want to hold it anymore. It's yours. And then I tried to mean it. What happened wasn't dramatic. No flood of peace, no immediate silence. But something I hadn't felt in months happened. I stopped feeling personally responsible for resolving everything before morning. The thoughts were still there, but they weren't mine alone anymore. That's the specific thing the hook promised you. Not that the anxiety disappears, but that it stops feeling like yours alone to carry in the dark. And that distinction, I spent years missing it. Because what I had been doing without realizing it was bringing my anxiety to God the way you bring a problem to someone you want to solve it for you, describing it, asking him to handle it, then taking it home with me when he didn't respond the way I expected. What I hadn't understood is that the invitation, "Come to me, all of you who are weary," is not an invitation to a transaction. It's an invitation to a transfer. You arrive carrying everything. You leave having handed it to someone whose hands are bigger than yours. That's what casting means. Not mentioning the weight. Not asking for it to feel lighter. Releasing your grip on it entirely. And trusting that where it lands is safer than where it's been. When I understood that, the whole shape of prayer at night changed for me. I wasn't trying to negotiate my way to peace anymore. I was just, finally, letting go. Now, the question is what that actually looks like in practice, because it's more concrete than it sounds. And that's exactly what I want to walk you through next. So here's what this actually looks like. 4 steps, and they work in sequence, so don't skip ahead. The first step is to stop, not just lie down. Actually stop. Before any words, before any prayer, 3 slow breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I used to skip this completely. I'd go straight into praying, still wound up, still in the same gear I'd been in all day. The breath isn't a technique, it's a signal. You're telling your body, the carrying is about to end. The second step is to name. Out loud if you can, even a whisper, or clearly in your mind. Go through what's actually sitting on you tonight, not a summary, the specific things, the conversation I keep replaying, the decision I still haven't made, the fear about tomorrow that I can't seem to put down. Name them one by one. Don't rush. This is the step most people skip because it feels slow and a little strange, like you're listing things God doesn't already know. But that's not what this is. You're not informing God. You're acknowledging to yourself what you've been carrying. There's something that happens when you say a thing clearly, even quietly, even just in your mind, that doesn't happen when you only think it in circles. It becomes a thing you're holding instead of a thing that's holding you. The third step is to release each one as you name it. After each thing, one phrase, "This is yours, not mine." That's it. Don't elaborate. Don't pray a paragraph around it. Name it, and hand it over with that one line. When I started doing this, it felt almost too simple, like I was going through motions. But I kept doing it because nothing else was working. And after a few nights, the words started to land differently. The releasing started to feel like something actually happening, not just something I was saying. The fourth step is silence. After the last thing you've named and released, stop. Don't fill the space. Don't check if it worked. Just stay there for a moment. 30 seconds, a minute, empty hands. That's all this step is. Stop, name, release, silence. 5 minutes. In the dark. No preparation. Those are the only conditions you need. Now, what should you actually expect when you do this? Because I want to be honest with you about that. What changes and what doesn't. Let me be honest with you about the first night. Probably nothing dramatic is going to happen. You're going to name the things, say the words, sit in the silence, and you might still feel the weight when you're done. The thoughts might still be there. You might fall asleep without feeling any different than when you started. That's not failure. That's just the first night. My first few nights I kept waiting for a signal, some feeling that told me it had worked. And when nothing came, I'd lie there wondering if I'd meant it enough, if the releasing had been real or just words I was saying at the ceiling. What I didn't realize is that something was shifting, even when I couldn't feel it shifting. Here's what I actually noticed. And when. The first thing that changed wasn't peace. It was something I almost missed. After about a week, I realized I was falling asleep before I finished the list. Not because the list was shorter, but because I wasn't holding each item as tightly. The thoughts were still there, but they'd lost some of their grip. That low-level urgency, the feeling that everything needs to be resolved before you're allowed to rest, it started to loosen. After a few weeks, something else. I started catching the weight earlier in the day. Not at midnight when it had already built into something heavy, but at 4 in the afternoon when I'd notice my shoulders, notice the tension, and recognize I've been carrying this for hours without putting it down. The nighttime practice had made me more aware of what I was accumulating during the day. That was unexpected, and it mattered more than the nights themselves. What takes longer, and I want to be real with you here, is the fear without a name. The background anxiety that's been running so long you've stopped noticing it. That one doesn't move in a week. I noticed it shifting somewhere around the second month. Not gone, but I could tell it had less weight behind it. Like something that had been pressing had eased back slightly. Still there, but no longer running everything. I want to tell you something I don't say lightly. There was a point around day 10 or 12 where I almost stopped. I wasn't feeling much. The nights were a little better, but nothing I could point to clearly. I remember thinking, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I kept going mostly because I had nothing better. And the week after that is when the shift became something I could actually name. I'm telling you this because if you hit that point, and you might, I don't want you to think it means the practice isn't working. It might mean you're right at the edge of where it starts to. But before you get there, I want to tell you about a few things that almost stopped me before that. Specific things, because knowing them ahead of time changes everything. 3 specific things. I fell into all of them. And now, you won't have to. The first one is the one I did most consistently, for longer than I'd like to admit. You name the things, you release them, you say, this is yours, not mine, and then, about 30 seconds later, you check. You notice whether the weight has actually lifted. You scan yourself for peace, you try to feel whether the releasing worked. And the moment you do that, you've taken it back. That's not releasing. That's handing something over and then immediately reaching for it again to make sure it's gone. I did this almost every night for weeks without realizing it. The practice felt complete. I'd done all the steps, but the checking was undoing it at the end. What helped me was noticing the impulse to check and recognizing it for what it is. One more thing to release. This need to know if it worked. This is yours too. The second error is subtler, and it's the one that kept me stuck the longest. Waiting to feel peace before trusting that God heard you. It sounds reasonable. If the releasing worked, shouldn't I feel different? If God received what I handed over, wouldn't there be some sign? But that's still using your feelings as the confirmation system. And feelings, especially late at night when you're exhausted and anxious, are not a reliable indicator of what God is doing. Isaiah says, "Do not fear, for I am with you." Not, "You will feel me with you." Just, "I am." Present tense. Whether you register it or not. I had to learn to separate the practice from the feeling. The practice is the act of releasing. The feeling is something that comes later. Sometimes that night, sometimes the next morning, sometimes 3 weeks in. What I know now is that the absence of feeling is not the absence of God. I just couldn't see it then. The third error is the one that ends most practices before they have a chance to work. Stopping too soon. Not dramatically. Most people don't decide to quit. They just miss 1 night, then 2. Then the practice quietly disappears because it never became a habit, and the nights got heavy again, and somewhere inside they filed it under, "I tried that, it didn't really work for me." I almost did this. That 10-day window I mentioned, where nothing seemed to be shifting, that's when most people stop, and I understand it. When you're tired and nothing feels different, continuing takes something that feels like stubbornness more than faith. What I'd tell you is this. If you're going to stop after 30 days. Not 10, not 2 weeks. Give it a full month before you decide anything. Because what I found, and what I think you'll find, is that the practice becomes something different after the first month. Less something you're doing and more something you are. Now you have the full picture. The what, the how, what to expect, and what to watch for. There's one thing left, and it's the simplest one. How to actually start tonight. So, tonight. Just tonight. One thing. Before you sleep, open your hands. Literally, if you can. Lie on your back, palms facing up. And say this. God, Here we are. I've been carrying this all day. I can't carry it anymore. It's yours. That's it. That's all I'm asking you to do tonight. If the specific things want to come, the worry about tomorrow, the thing you can't stop replaying, let them come. Name them and hand them over. But if the words don't come, the open hands are enough. You don't need the right sentence. You just need to mean the gesture. I remember the first night I tried this with any real intention. I didn't feel ready. The house was quiet, but I wasn't. I just opened my hands in the dark and said something close to that sentence, and then I waited. Nothing dramatic happened, but I noticed at some point that I had stopped thinking, and I couldn't tell you exactly when. This week, just this week, do that every night. Same time, same position. Don't try to evaluate it. Don't check if it's working. Just do it and let the night take over. And then, when it starts to feel less like something you're doing and more like somewhere you're going, that's when you add the naming, one by one, the specific things. But not yet. Not until the simple version feels like home. If there's one night this week that's harder than the others, and there probably will be, go back to the sentence. Just the sentence. Open hands, honest words, and the same God who was there the night before. The psalm says he is a very present help, not eventual. Present. That word always steadies me when the practice feels like it isn't reaching anything. You don't need to be in a better place to start this. I wasn't. I started it from the worst stretch of my life, burned out, running on empty, praying words I wasn't sure I believed anymore. And it held. It's going to hold for you too. We brought something real to God tonight. Whatever you were carrying when you clicked, you didn't carry it alone through this. If you want this kind of prayer to continue, not just tonight, but tomorrow night and the night after, I made something specifically for that. It's called 30 Days of Faith, a guided prayer devotional. 30 days of me praying with you, same voice, same honesty, the same way we did here tonight, just every day for a month. It's not a program, it's company. The link is in the description. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Tell me what you're releasing tonight. Just name it in the comments. The same way you named it to God a few minutes ago. One thing. You don't need to explain it or give it context. Just put it there. I read them. And sometimes writing it out is its own kind of prayer. And if someone came to mind while we were going through this, someone you know who's lying in the dark with a heavy mind tonight, send this to them. It takes 10 seconds. It might be exactly what they need. There's a new prayer here every day. If you want to come back tomorrow, subscribe. I'll be here. You showed up tonight with everything you were carrying. That means something. God sees you. Even here, even now, I'll see you tomorrow.